Pikmin 4. Finally, after all these years, sort of. Not really for me. I only got into Pikmin like 2 or 3 years ago, and I only played Pikmin 3 for the first time recently, so it's not like I was dying for a new Pikmin game, but a new Pikmin game we did get, and it is excellent. Heads up, there are going to be spoilers in this video. I'm going to be showing and talking about everything that Pikmin 4 has to offer, so if you don't want any spoilers, I'll just say real quick that I think the game is fantastic. I think that anyone that has ever enjoyed any Pikmin game is definitely going to like Pikmin 4. I would definitely recommend it to any Pikmin fan. And as far as anyone trying to get into Pikmin for the first time, this is overall, in many ways, the best Pikmin game. It's the most polished, the most refined, the most triple-A-ist Pikmin has ever been. It's also the biggest and most content-rich Pikmin game of them all, so if you've ever been interested before in Pikmin and you don't really feel like doing your homework and checking out all the previous games, Pikmin 4 is probably the best overall Pikmin experience you're gonna get, so if you want to start here, I'd say you're perfectly fine to, though I would recommend checking out the previous games because they're really good too. Except for 2, I don't like that game. So with all that out of the way, let's start talking about Pikmin 4 finally, though before we get into the gameplay stuff, I do want to talk a little bit about the presentation of Pikmin 4, because this game is such a modern Nintendo game, you know what I mean? Ever since the Switch, Nintendo has gotten really good at infusing their games with this kind of whimsical sense of wonder, and it's just got that Nintendo magic, that special spice that really makes the game feel like it's some really cool, big experience. You know, you see that here in Pikmin 4 with, like, the introduction when you see that first cutscene and, you know, you're flying around the house and it's all mysterious. Ooh, this is so different than anything we've ever seen in Pikmin before. And then Olimar sends out the distress signal and you get that cutscene of, oh, the rescue force was gonna go save him, but then they crash too, and now there's only one person left that can save everybody. And that's you, and then you get the cutscene as you fly over to the planet, and it's it's all riding on you, player, you gotta do it, you gotta go on this big adventure to save the day. You know, they've never done stuff like this in Pikmin before, and it's the exact same kind of vibe that you see in, you know, Breath of the Wild, Mario Odyssey, Kirby and the Forgotten Land, like this way of making things seem so cool and big and awesome in that really wonderful way that they've been doing in all their games lately. It's pretty friggin' awesome. It is kind of starting to feel a little bit formulaic at this point, but goddammit, the formula is just so good that I don't even care. And while we're talking about the presentation of things, I also want to quickly talk a little bit about the story of Pikmin 4, because this game has, like, no story, essentially. There's a lot of cutscenes and a lot of dialogue, but really very little of consequence actually happens here, which is fine in general. I'm not bothered by that. I don't really care much about the story of the Pikmin games. But the real issue is that it's so stretched out with all of this vapid, pointless dialogue. Like, this game is written like a goddamn episode of Dora the Explorer, where anytime you encounter something even slightly conceptually different than what you've seen before, the game has to stop you, and it doesn't just tell you, here's what the new thing is. No, we have to have all these characters talking about, oh, what's this new thing? This is so interesting. What could possibly be going on here? Oh, well, I scanned the thing, and I think this could possibly be what's going on. Oh, player, that's really interesting. Perhaps you can use this to your advantage by doing this. Yeah, why don't you go up to that thing and try pressing this button and maybe something will happen. Go, player, try it out for yourself. And it's like, shut the fuck up and let me play the goddamn video game. I understand this is a game for kids, but Jesus Christ, man, you can let players figure things out on their own at least a little bit. I thought Pikmin 2 was bad with interrupting you every 2 seconds to tell you about stuff, but Pikmin 4 is actually far, far worse. So, yeah, that's a little bit annoying, especially in the early hours of Pikmin 4, but it's not the hugest issue in the world because you can skip through all of it, so it's fine. But man, this game does not respect your intelligence, let me tell ya. Anyway, now let's actually start talking about the gameplay of Pikmin 4, and boy howdy is there a lot to cover here because there's so much new and different. I guess first let's talk about the new camera angle and the altered controls, because that informs every single thing about how Pikmin plays. It's very interesting. This time around, instead of that top-down, really zoomed-out camera that we've had in all the previous games, now it's much more like a traditional third-person camera right behind your character. And I was curious about that because it's very nice from, like, a, immersive perspective of getting that close-down view, getting to see the world like that. But also, I felt that the really high-up camera was very practical for the gameplay of Pikmin. So I was wondering how this would affect gameplay, and it turns out that it doesn't have that huge of effects, because you can actually just zoom out the camera to the old style and play just like an old Pikmin game at any time, so it's really just an option. I do think it does have an impact on the level design a bit, and I'll talk about that later, but the main benefit you get from this new camera angle is you can see far ahead of you. You can see things in the distance and pre-plan and prepare before you approach them, because in the old Pikmin games you could only see what was around you from that top-down angle. And as far as the new controls go, the primary thing is how the cursor works now, as it's very different than previous games. This time around for Pikmin 4, the cursor is once again locked to your character, but a big change here is that the cursor will automatically lock onto anything within your range that your character is relatively pointed toward. But what this new soft lock-on system does is it means that manually aiming where you throw stuff basically doesn't exist anymore in Pikmin 4. Pikmin 3's lock-on system was already kind of doing this sort of thing, but now in Pikmin 4, it is pretty much the only way you can play. There is really no option whatsoever anymore for manually aiming stuff, which is a little bit unfortunate in my opinion, as it does take away a little bit of the fun and depth and challenge of Pikmin, having to manually aim for different targets on enemies to hit their weak spots and stuff. Now, you can't even think about that stuff if you wanted to. But, at the same time, the lock-on does allow for a lot of great new quality of life features. For example, when you're throwing Pikmin at an object to pick it up, they force a pause in your throwing when you've thrown the minimum number of Pikmin required to pick up that object. Because in the previous games, when you were throwing Pikmin at something, you'd have to count how many Pikmin you were throwing if you wanted to throw that precise number. And that would just be an annoying thing that you'd constantly have to do in your head. And usually, because you're throwing Pikmin really fast, you're going to get the count wrong and throw too many or too few. And now, you don't have to worry about that at all. You can just mash the button until you're forced to stop, and you know that you've thrown the precise number of Pikmin that you need. That is a quality of life feature that I am absolutely not going to complain about. I think that is great. It also means that when you have a bunch of things in a small area that you need to carry all of them, you don't have to play that game of like trying to precisely throw a Pikmin at this and a Pikmin at that and a couple of Pikmin at that thing to make sure everyone grabs the correct thing. You can once again just mash the button and the lock-on system will automatically snap from one thing to the other as the necessary number of Pikmin are deployed. That is wonderful, so convenient, so easy. Like, these are the kinds of quality of life improvements that we've gotten with every single Pikmin game. So while the lock-on system does kind of reduce the gameplay a little bit, at the same time, man, those features are really, really nice. Another thing that I really like that they've done is they've made the Pikmin a lot smarter in their idle behavior. For example, if you were fighting an enemy in a previous Pikmin game and you're just throwing as many Pikmin as you need to until the thing dies, what happens in the previous games is all of the Pikmin that are just standing around are all gonna rush to that thing and pick it up and start carrying it back to base, which means you're gonna have way more Pikmin than you want carrying something back, so you have to recall everyone and then redeploy them so that way there's just a precise number. But now, this time around, when there's a bunch of idle Pikmin near something to pick up, only the number necessary to pick it up will automatically go to it, and the other ones will just stand around and do nothing, or they'll run to something else to interact with. So that, again, just reduces the amount of, like, little micromanaging you need to do with picking up all these things and making sure everything is the exact numbers and, optimizing all that. You can kill an enemy, and then it drops a whole bunch of goodies, and you can just kind of stand there, and the Pikmin are just going to automatically sort out exactly what they need to do, and you don't even have to worry about it, and you can just pick up the stragglers and keep on going. And really, I could just keep on going on and on and on about quality of life features, like they've made getting Pikmin out of your onion even faster and even easier than previous games. There are so many things they've done to Pikmin 4 to make it play so well, so smoothly. It is like problem-free in terms of the moment-to-moment gameplay. There's no, like, weird little hiccups or niggles here or there or awkward things you have to deal with. They have refined the core Pikmin gameplay and formula so much in this game that I don't even know if it's physically possible to improve it any more beyond this point. It's kind of ridiculous. I was so impressed time and time again with, oh my god, they did that tiny little thing that makes the game just that much smoother, that much easier to play. Simple stuff, like when you're riding on Ochi and both of you have the ability to pluck Pikmin, when you go to start plucking, your character is automatically going to get off Ochi so they can both start plucking to get it done faster, and then you'll automatically jump back on Ochi so you don't have to fumble around with get off so that way you can both pluck and then get back on. They thought of that so you don't have to worry about it. And that is basically the entire gameplay experience of Pikmin 4. If there is something that you could possibly conceptualize that would make playing the game smoother and easier, they did it. And there's a lot of stuff that they did that you wouldn't think of that also makes the game smoother to play. It is pretty fucking incredible, I must say. That Nintendo polish is really shining through with this game in particular. Now, as far as the game itself overall is concerned, it's like pretty much any other Pikmin game. You have your days with a limited time limit every single day. This time around in Pikmin 4, we do not have a limited number of days. You can take as many days as you want, similar to Pikmin 2, which I'm not personally in love with. I do prefer Pikmin games having a set time limit that you have to beat the game. But ultimately, none of those time limits have ever actually mattered, so it's always really just been a personal thing of trying to beat the game in as few days as you possibly can anyway. So it's not like a huge problem, but I do prefer games with a limited timer. Makes all the time management stuff feel more meaningful, in my opinion. But anyway, as far as the core gameplay in the main areas is concerned, it's some good old-fashioned Pikmin time management gameplay, and it's very fun. As far as Pikmin types goes, every single Pikmin type from every previous Pikmin game is present here, which is pretty cool. And we also have the addition of some new Pikmin types, of course, firstly being the Ice Pikmin, which is kind of like taking the Ultra Bitter Spray from Pikmin 2 and reassigning that ability to now Ice Pikmin. If enough Ice Pikmin are attacking an enemy, a little ice meter will fill up, and when that fills all the way, the enemy will freeze, and you can do a bunch of free damage to it. And additionally, Ice Pikmin can be used to freeze bodies of water, so that way you can walk over the ice. And I'll talk about the other new Pikmin type a little bit later, but now I want to talk about Ochi, the new thing that's been added to Pikmin 4, who's kind of a Pikmin, but also kind of a captain at the same time. And Ochi, I think, is the best new thing that's been added to Pikmin 4. I actually didn't know that you'd be able to control Ochi like a captain. I thought that Pikmin 4, you would just have one captain, but you don't. You can totally control Ochi, and he can control Pikmin and throw them around and stuff, so you do have two captains here. And I thought with Pikmin 3, they had done everything you could possibly do with the idea of multiple captains, but I was wrong. There was one thing that Pikmin 3 did not do that Pikmin 4 does with its multiple captains, and that is giving the captains different abilities from each other. First of all, Ochi can jump, which is very new and different for Pikmin, and it means you actually do a little bit of 3D platforming, which is pretty cool. I'm a fan of that for sure. But also, Ochi can do this rush where he runs very quickly and slams into things, which can be used either as an attack or as a way to deploy a bunch of Pikmin onto an enemy or whatever. But it can also be used to, like, run against conveyor belts to allow Ochi to get to areas that nothing else can. Ochi can also swim on the surface of water, and Pikmin can ride atop Ochi, allowing Ochi to take Pikmin across water that normally could not traverse it in any other way. But you also have some areas that Ochi cannot get to. For example, there might be some bars blocking an area where Ochi is too big to fit through, so you can only go through with your captain and a bunch of Pikmin. Or you have some tunnels that Ochi can fit through, but you also have some that are too small and Ochi can't get through them, so you have to go through with your captain. And when it comes to combat, Ochi has that rush move that he can do that your captain cannot, but your captain can also make Pikmin charge, which Ochi cannot do. So they also play a little bit differently in terms of how you approach enemy encounters, and there are some enemies that your captain is more suited to fighting, and some enemies that Ochi is more suited to fighting. It works incredibly well, and it adds even further depth to the multi-captain system that's been developing throughout the Pikmin series. Even if you only have 2 captains here, there is so much more to consider here because your captains can handle different things, or the same things but in different ways, and one might be more efficient than the other at doing certain stuff, but there might also be stuff right next to that that only the other captain can do, so maybe you send both of them there to handle the obstacle together, but maybe not. Maybe you split them up and you have them divert back around and something. You can do a lot to really be smart with how you play, organizing between your character and Ochi. It's very, very cool. And also what's cool is that Ochi doubles as both a captain and a Pikmin. You can send Ochi out to attack stuff, to carry stuff back to base, to break down walls, to interact with things. He can do things that no other Pikmin type can do, but also he operates in a completely different way because you only have one Ochi. You can't have a whole army of a bunch of Pikmin that can do everything that Ochi can do. But then, even on top of that, you can also upgrade Ochi over the course of the game. This is a really big thing for Pikmin 4. Progression has become a really, really big focus here, and I think it's very cool. You can make Ochi stronger so he can carry more stuff. You can make him immune to different elements. You can allow him to interact with things under the water. You can give him the ability to pluck Pikmin. You can do a lot of stuff with how you want to upgrade Ochi and how you kind of want to build him. You can make him a really, really good Pikmin. You can make him into more of an effective captain that can do more things. It is very, very cool. Let me tell you, this fucking dog can do it all. And I mentioned how progression has been made much more of a big deal here in Pikmin 4, and I was not joking about that, because in addition to upgrading Ochi, there are multiple other progression systems that have been added to Pikmin 4. For example, items. That's a whole new thing here as well. You know, you had the Ultra Spicy Spray in the previous Pikmin games, but now you have so much more. You have a whole inventory of multiple different items that can do all kinds of different things, and you get these items by collecting raw materials and then going to a shop to buy them, but you can also just find these things around playing throughout the game world, and there's a lot of stuff here. Obviously, you have, like, the Ultra Spicy Spray from previous Pikmin games, but, like, another thing that they've just made simpler and more intuitive and natural is the bombs from previous Pikmin games that you would normally have to have a Pikmin carry. Now they're just in your inventory, and you bust them out, and you throw them yourself, which is just so much easier, so much more intuitive, works so much better than any previous Pikmin game. That is so nice. In addition to freeze bombs that can freeze enemies, or things that can stun enemies, there is a ton of these different items that you can stock up your inventory with. But additionally, there are also permanent upgrade items that you can spend your raw materials on that can do all kinds of things. They can speed your characters up, they can increase your character's HP and defense, they can make your characters immune to certain element types. They can even grant you new abilities, and some of these abilities, I'm gonna be honest, are way too fucking good and way too overpowered. Particularly the Idler's Alert, I think, is absurd. This is an item that when you use it, any idling Pikmin anywhere in the entire level are going to run to the destination where you activated it from, which is insanely powerful, because in Pikmin, anytime you send your Pikmin back to base to carry something back, they're just going to stand there idling. And in the previous Pikmin games, you would have to manage that in your whole time management strategy. You'd have to have a captain go back to base to pick up your Pikmin, and that worked very well into the flow, but now you don't even have to worry about that. You can just see that, oh, I got like 30 Pikmin that are back at base not doing anything, activate the Idler's Alert and go back to what you were doing, and by the time you've thrown out all your Pikmin, all your other Pikmin are already back, so you could just keep on going, which is insanely nice, so convenient, even better for time management. But it's also, like, completely eliminating an entire part of the core Pikmin strategy of having to return back to base. But at the same time, they do take very good advantage of this extreme amount of control you have of your Pikmin, and I'll get into that a little bit later. And then, in addition to that, we also have the progression of your Pikmin, because like every previous Pikmin game, you gain more Pikmin types as you get further and further into the game. And now there are 8, technically 9 Pikmin types, so there is a lot to get here. And they've done something very clever with the way they dole out Pikmin this time around, because like previous games, you will get onions of different colors that will add to your existing onion and allow you to create new Pikmin types. But they've also brought back caves in Pikmin 4, and in caves you can get Pikmin that you don't have onions for, just like in Pikmin 2. but it's not just limited to purples and whites like it was in that game. You can get Pikmin of any color and any type in the caves, meaning you can get access to Pikmin types that normally have an onion before you get their onion, and that is how you're introduced to many Pikmin types for the first time in Pikmin 4. So for example, when you first encounter yellows, it's not by getting the yellow onion, it's by going into a cave and finding a couple of yellows, and then you have like 10 of them, and that's your entire yellow population. So they're very precious, you have to be very careful with them until you get a little bit further into the game, and then you get the yellow onion, and now you can start building up your yellow population. And it's a really cool way they go about it. Sometimes you have very limited numbers of certain Pikmin types. Other Pikmin types, you're going to get introduced to them by finding the onion. And in fact, with some Pikmin types, you can actually do it differently depending on how you play and where you explore. Some Pikmin types, you may find the onion before you encounter any in caves, or you may go to caves first and get a handful of them before finding the onion. There's actually multiple onion locations for a single color, so you can get them at different points throughout the game. So it's very open and freeform. It's not super linear and guided like a lot of previous Pikmin games. You can really tackle this in very many different ways, which I really love. But also, another new big thing that they've added to Pikmin is the idea of not just growing your Pikmin populations and getting different Pikmin types, but also increasing the amount of Pikmin you can have deployed on the field at once. They've added these things called Flarlick, which when you collect those, that increases the number of Pikmin you can have out by 10, which is super interesting and cool. It adds a whole new type of progression blocker. You can have things that you just don't have enough Pikmin in order to be able to get past this, so you need to come back later when you can carry more types. It also means that you're not as powerful because you don't have 100 Pikmin that you can collapse on enemies for a lot of the game. And this stuff is all great. This is exactly the kind of stuff that I had issue with in Pikmin 1. In that game, you get everything so quickly, and it feels like there's almost no progression here. But now, in Pikmin 4, you're constantly growing through multiple different avenues, building your army up, getting more powerful, getting Ochi more powerful, getting more items that enable you to do more things, and do things more efficiently, and with more strength, and with more Pikmin, and with more types, accessing new areas that you couldn't access before via multiple different methods. The sense of progression here in Pikmin 4 is far, far, far stronger than it's ever been in any previous Pikmin game, and it's pretty friggin' awesome. I totally love how it works here. However, now I do want to start talking a little bit about some of the negative sides of Pikmin 4, because as great as this progression stuff is, I do think that in some ways it has actually harmed Pikmin 4 compared to previous games. Because as cool as the idea of increasing your Pikmin amounts is, it also means that for the majority of Pikmin 4, you're not going to be able to have that many Pikmin at once. You start the game with just 20 Pikmin, and that is extremely little, and you don't get Flarlick super duper often. You're going to be building that up over the course of the entire game. You don't get 100 Pikmin until like the last area or two. And what this means is that it's very hard to multitask for a good portion of Pikmin 4, because you just don't really have that many Pikmin to justify splitting your captains up and trying to do different things in different parts of the map. You know, if you only have 40 Pikmin, then that's pretty much what you're gonna need to fight tougher enemies effectively. And then, you know, when you're collecting treasures, you gotta throw 10 over here and 7 over here, and then 15 have to go work on building that bridge. And then you only have like 5 Pikmin left, and what the hell are you gonna do with that? Nothing, really. So for the majority of Pikmin 4, I found that the game was a lot more slow-paced than previous Pikmin games, especially compared to Pikmin 3. In that game, you're constantly switching back and forth to all your captains. You go over here, you go over here, you do that, and then you're trying to do all these things simultaneously. But here in Pikmin 4, for a lot of it, you just don't have the numbers to justify that kind of thing. A lot of what you're doing is moving with your entire army, just tackling all of the areas and challenges individually, until you run out of Pikmin, and then you kind of just have to wait for everyone to finish what they're doing so you can recollect your 30 Pikmin and go try to do another set of individual things one at a time. Of course, this problem does get better and better as you get more Pikmin, and then you can start to split up your captains and have a decent number of them that you can try to multitask and have them do different things simultaneously. But even to the very end of the game, I still felt that there was significantly less focus on multitasking compared to previous games, especially 3, due to the nature of the way Pikmin 4 is designed. And there's a couple of different factors here that play into this. For one, as cool as the idea of having your captain and Oshi have different abilities, what it means is that splitting up your captains oftentimes isn't really that great of an idea, because you'll run into obstacles that only your captain can deal with, and then shortly after that, there will be obstacles that only Ochi can deal with. So a lot of the times I found the smartest and most effective thing to do to travel with both of them together, so that way I had all of my options available and I could handle anything that I would run into, which meant that it oftentimes wasn't a great idea to split up and try to do different things in different areas at the same time. Of course, there is still plenty of room to do that, but definitely a lot less compared to Pikmin 3. Additionally, I also felt that the level design of the main areas in Pikmin 4 is significantly simpler than the level design of the areas in 3. You know, in 3, there were some obstacles that you really had to tackle in interesting ways. You know, there'd be some levels where you have two captains and they're separated on different land masses, and you have to throw Pikmin back and forth in order to make sure that both your captains have all the different types they're going to need to do everything on their sides to eventually bridge the gap and reunite them. There was a lot of cool stuff like that in the main levels of Pikmin 3, and Pikmin 4 doesn't really have stuff like that. The level design is all much simpler, much more straightforward, and you kind of just wander around and encounter individual obstacles that you just tackle in very straightforward ways. I think the design of the main levels in Pikmin 4 is quite a step down compared to Pikmin 3. And also, another thing is, I think this is partially due to the new camera angle in Pikmin 4. The levels here in Pikmin 4 are much bigger than any other Pikmin game, which is cool, but what they're not is denser than any other Pikmin game. Pikmin 3, those levels were extremely compact and extremely dense. There was stuff everywhere, all over the place for you to interact with. But here in 4, the areas are a lot wider and honestly more empty. There are much, much larger spaces in Pikmin 4 where you're not really doing anything more than just kind of walking forward until you get to the next thing. And I think this was done to accommodate the new camera, so that way you have a lot more space so the camera doesn't get caught up on things, so you can get that closer, more intimate point of view. But because of that, things are much more spread out than they were in previous games, and this significantly slows down the pacing of Pikmin 4's gameplay. As I already said, this game feels slower compared to Pikmin 3 because you only have two captains and you don't really split them up as much, but with how much more spread out everything is, it really feels significantly slower paced than Pikmin 3 did. In that game, I constantly felt like I needed to be on the ball in order to optimize as well as possible when playing the main levels, sending my captains to different areas and constantly switching back and forth and using Go Here to send them over to do all these different things, and really trying to squeeze out as much as I possibly could out of every single day. In Pikmin 4, there is so much less of that, and it feels like it's such a smaller focus compared to previous games. And if you watched my Pikmin 3 review, that is my favorite part of Pikmin in general, and particularly Pikmin 3. How much you can do to be more efficient, to optimize, to really time manage well, and do all these things simultaneously, and go over here and do this, and be all over that place, and do all these things all at once. That is the stuff that I really, really most enjoy about Pikmin. And Pikmin 4 really pulls back on that in a way that I'm not in love with. And additionally, a thing that they've done for Pikmin 4 that I really don't understand at all is limit the amount of Pikmin types you can take with you in the different areas. Now, to a degree, I think this does make sense because having 8 Pikmin types would be a lot to sift through. It would also mean that you wouldn't really have that many Pikmin per type if you tried to have a balanced party, which would make them unusable for a lot of things. So limiting the amount of Pikmin types you can take makes sense to me, but what doesn't make sense is why limit it to only 3 Pikmin types at a time. The previous games, we were able to take 5 Pikmin types, and that was perfectly workable, so I don't know why they didn't make it 5 Pikmin types in this game as well, which again adds even further to the fact that the levels are so much less complex here compared to Pikmin 3 because there's only 3 types plus Ochi that the level design can utilize. So with all those factors in mind, I have to say I was in a certain way a little bit let down by Pikmin 4. Despite the fact that overall I think the game is great, in a number of ways I think that it is a step down from Pikmin 3. And all of those ways involve the core gameplay in the main areas and the time management elements, which is my favorite part of Pikmin. Which I find especially weird in Pikmin 4 because in this game they keep banging on and on about Dandori, which, first of all, I find it weird that they're using that term specifically so much, you know, it's so Japanese. But Dandori basically translates to time management, and they keep on talking about you really have to improve your Dandori skills if you want to make it with Pikmin 4 and blah blah. Always talking about trying to efficiently strategize and manage and really up your Dandori skills and whatever. But then when you actually play the game, it has a significantly smaller focus on Dandori than the previous game. Pikmin 3, that is a Dandori game. Every single thing about the game is all about that time management, and that's why I find it so much fun. Pikmin 4, it feels so much less like it's built around the Dandori, the time management, the optimization. In many ways, to me, Pikmin 4 feels more like just a traditional adventure game with some time management aspects built into it. Now, fortunately, as an adventure game, Pikmin 4 is extremely fun, but as a time management game, I think Pikmin 3 is significantly better than Pikmin 4, which for a series of time management games, that's not exactly the best thing in the world to me. Though, another way to look at it is that Pikmin 3 already did a fantastic job as the ultimate time management Pikmin game. Maybe it was intentional that they wanted to reduce the emphasis on time management to make it more of an adventure game, to make it a bit different than Pikmin 4, and do something slightly new with the series. In that case, I think that a lot of the decisions here make sense, and it works very well. But still, with the time management being my favorite aspect of Pikmin, it is still a little bit of a letdown to me. That said, while the core gameplay of Pikmin 4 doesn't have as much emphasis on time management as Pikmin 3, there is still a lot of really good Dandori gameplay here that I'll talk about in a little bit. But next, I actually want to talk about the caves of Pikmin 4, because if you watched my Pikmin 2 review, you know that I cannot stand the caves in that game, and they completely ruined Pikmin 2 for me. I do not at all like that game, and the caves are squarely responsible for it. So I was very, very worried going into Pikmin 4, knowing that they were bringing the caves back. However, I can pleasantly say that I think they have made the caves significantly better in Pikmin 4. They're still my least favorite part of the game, but I don't absolutely dread them or loathe them the way I did in the previous game. I actually kind of like them now, and I think that they're decently fun. A lot's been done about the caves to make them much more enjoyable. First of all, they are no longer procedurally generated. They're now designed by real human beings, which is great. And in addition to that, they have rethought the idea of what the caves are. They're less so now these gauntlets where the challenge is about surviving to the end, Now the caves are more of a series of challenges that are more kind of focused on the puzzly elements of Pikmin 4. A good number of these can require some real puzzle solving, and you gotta think about what to do and how to do it and manage your different Pikmin types to take advantage of their different abilities to get to different areas and do different things, and that's pretty decent. It's the kind of stuff that you would normally do in the overworld of Pikmin games, but now in a more focused, compact form. Additionally, the caves are nowhere near as long as they were in Pikmin 2. Almost all of the caves now, none of them are longer than like 6 floors, so they don't drag on nearly as much as they did in that game, which is very nice. And also a nice thing that they've done is the caves now do work on the timer that the main areas still work on. Now, instead of time freezing when you're in the caves, time now moves at 1/6 of its normal pace. So you can take as much time as you want in the caves, but it means when you come back out, it's going to be much later in the day than it was before. Which means you actually have a motivation now to try to be efficient and get through the caves as quickly as you can, and still try to incorporate more of that multitasking that you get in the traditional Pikmin gameplay. But it's not super in your face because the time is so slowed. However, there's significantly less reason to take your time because the caves are nowhere near as dangerous or treacherous as they were in Pikmin 2. Now you can tackle them in a much more relaxed way, kind of just moving forward, dealing with the things you run into, and you don't need to be as worried as all the traps killing your entire fucking army all over the place. Which I'm sure that fans of Pikmin 2 who like the caves in that might be a bit let down by the caves here, but personally I think this is so much better than the caves in Pikmin 2. It feels so much less detached than the core gameplay of the rest of the game, like Pikmin 2 did. They've also added caves that have different entrances and exits, so there could be an area that you cannot get to normally. In order to reach this new area, you have to go through the cave, and then the exit spits you out in this area that you can't otherwise get to, which is very cool. So all of this stuff to me makes the caves so much better than they were in Pikmin 2. I still don't love them per se, but they are nowhere near as intrusive as they were in the previous game, and I actually kind of enjoy them now, so that is the biggest improvement over previous games that I can possibly give, which is really good. I was very, very afraid about the caves in Pikmin 4. I'm still not in love with the fact that it means that you're kind of jumping back and forth from different paces of gameplay. I do still prefer that core overworld time management gameplay that you get in traditional Pikmin, and so jumping into caves, the pacing completely changes, and the general design changes quite a bit still, and so I don't really like that half the time it feels like I'm playing the core Pikmin stuff on the surface, and then half the time I'm in caves with this slower pacing to it. Still not my cup of tea, but they have also kind of remedied this issue a little bit by having more than just caves as alternative gameplay that you do besides the core main gameplay in the main areas. Because now, in addition to caves, you also have Dandori challenges and Dandori battles. And Dandori challenges are basically just taking the challenge mode from Pikmin 3, but now integrating that into the core game. You can enter these challenges just like you do a cave, finding them out in the overworld, and then you enter this smaller little challenge area where you have a time limit and you have to collect all the things, and just like in Pikmin 3, there are different medals you can get based on how good of a score you get, and of course I wanted to get Platinum on every single one of these challenges. And as you would expect, now that these have been integrated into the main gameplay, the majority of these challenges are significantly easier than they were in Pikmin 3. In Pikmin 3, because the challenge mode was a side mode, they could make them really hard and really focused on really trying to get as good as possible at Pikmin, which I loved. But here, most of them are a lot easier. They get more difficult as you ramp up. Thankfully, once you get to like the last 2 areas, these Dandori challenges do actually get quite difficult, and the last couple I really had to do a number of attempts at them, really improving and optimizing my strategy and trying to get it as good as possible. And this is what I was saying, while the main areas don't have as strong of Dandori gameplay as Pikmin 3, there is still some really strong time management gameplay here in Pikmin 4 in different areas like these Dandori challenges, And the Dandori Battles is basically taking the two-player mode from Pikmin and now also integrating that into the main campaign, where you fight against an AI, and it's about who can get a better score collecting as much treasure as they can. And these are pretty fun, these are pretty cool. Though, honestly, trying this, it really makes me think that this mode would be extremely fun if you had two experienced Pikmin players competing against each other. I could see a lot of depth coming out of these Dandori battles in two-player mode. Sadly, I don't have anybody to play with, and there's no online play. But man, I really want to give Dandori battles a go against another person because I think there is a ton of legitimate competitive strategy potential here. And night mode is very cool. It's kind of similar to the caves, how it takes the core gameplay elements of Pikmin but utilizes them in a new way. Instead of being about time management, this is kind of a tower defense game in a sort of way. Here you're going to have these things called luminals that you have to defend as enemies are going to come and try to destroy these things, and you have to last the entire night. And here is where we're introduced to the other new Pikmin type of Pikmin 4, Glow Pikmin, who only appear at night. They're the only type of Pikmin you're allowed to use at night. Normal Pikmin cannot be used in this mode. And Glow Pikmin are extremely versatile and powerful. They are immune to every type of hazard in the game, and most importantly, whenever they finish a task that they're working on, they automatically teleport right back to you, which is like the most useful ability a Pikmin could possibly have. And you have to take advantage of that ability in this night mode because you start with not that many Glow Pikmin, and you have to collect these little star bit looking things in order to grow your Glow Pikmin army, which you're going to have to do in order to counteract the losses you're going to get from combat, but also grow your army up enough that you're going to have a decently sized force that can actually take on the tougher enemies that you're going to be encountering in this night mode. And this creates a pretty fun balance where you need to stick around your luminals and defend them, but at the same time you have to go out to get to all these star bits in order to grow your Pikmin army to get them stronger. So you're constantly running back and forth trying to pick up all these things, but you also got to keep your eye on the enemies that are coming and make sure that you keep your bases defended. And this is where, again, we recontextualize the multiple captains well. You can have one captain go out to collect star pieces while the other captain stays back to defend things. But then also you get later night challenges where you have two luminals that you have to defend, and so maybe you have one captain defend each of these luminals and you're switching back and forth and trying to just collect as many Glow Pikmin as you can with each of them trading off. But again, you gotta remember that Ochi and your player character fight in different ways, that Ochi is not able to use the charge ability, and Glow Pikmin specifically have this big powerful charge they can do where you really charge it up and they turn in this big ball that you can shoot at enemies and it stuns them and allows the Glow Pikmin to do a big ton of damage to the enemy, and Ochi cannot do that. So a lot of the bigger, tougher stuff, you really want to make sure that your captain is the one that's going to be able to tackle those things, which means sometimes you have to switch which captain is defending what and which is handling different things. And this whole mode, it's really, really fun. I like it a lot, but unfortunately, it suffers from the same kind of thing that much of Pikmin 4 does, which is that it never really gets as challenging as I wish it did. Like many things throughout the Pikmin series, I see so much potential here for really cool gameplay, really having to be careful and make sure that you're keeping your eye on your luminals, but also needing to spend time building up your army, and oh, it could be so cool, but they rarely ever really push it that far and make it that hard, and so most of these I was able to complete first try. But similar to the Dandori challenges, a couple of the later ones actually did get pretty tough and took a couple of attempts, especially when they start to throw in some really tough enemies that you have to deal with, and that gets pretty cool, and it kind of gets, like, scary, like, oh shit, here comes multiple smoky progs coming for my base, and I have to fucking deal with these things. So yeah, overall the mode is very cool, it's very fun. I wish it was a little bit more challenging, but I still find it very, very enjoyable. And I feel it adds well to the smorgasbord of different gameplay styles that you find in Pikmin 4. You know, I said that I do generally prefer having that core overworld gameplay in Pikmin, but with Pikmin 4, there are so many different types of gameplay that you do that it feels like a good variety of different things that you're doing that all still feel like I'm playing Pikmin, just in different contexts or in different ways. You do some main area core gameplay where it's like the traditional Pikmin gameplay that you know and love, though a little bit more laid back. But then you go into a Dandori challenge, and now the time management stuff gets a lot more intense, or you can go into a Dandori battle and get a similar thing there. But then you go into a cave, and things slow down and get a little bit more puzzly, and then the day ends, you go into nighttime, and now you have this cool little survival gameplay that you have to do. And you're constantly switching between all these different styles of gameplay, and I think it works to create a fun loop here where you're doing lots of different things the entire time. And thankfully, all of these different forms of gameplay are all fun and enjoyable. The only thing I feel that Pikmin 4 is kind of lacking in is boss fights. There are bosses, of course, and bigger, tougher enemies that you have to deal with, but Pikmin 3, every area had, like, a boss, you know, a unique, really big, kind of cinematic enemy that you fight in a very different way to anything else in the game, and Pikmin 4 doesn't have anything like that except for the final boss. That is the only boss like that, and it's a really cool, fun boss fight, and I wish there was more stuff like that, but sadly there isn't. Still, overall, that is a shit ton of stuff. Pikmin 4 is an extremely meaty game filled with so much goddamn content. It is absolutely ridiculous. And I'm not even done talking about everything in the game because there's even more here. Because at a certain point in the game, once you rescue Olimar, then you get access to what feels like should have been like DLC or something that was added in Pikmin 4 Deluxe or whatever. You get a whole little side story mode that you get to do where you play as Olimar, and when you first go to the menu of it, you're like, wait a minute, there's a day counter there, and 3 Pikmin types, and a time limit counter that goes up to hours. What the fuck is this? Is this like a remake of Pikmin 1 in the Pikmin 4 system? And sadly, no, it's not. That would have been really fucking cool. But it's kind of like a reimagining of Pikmin 1, where you use the Pikmin 4 gameplay and the Pikmin 4 maps to play like a whole other Pikmin game inside of it based on Pikmin 1. Here, it's just like the first game. You have to collect 30 ship parts, and you only have the first 3 Pikmin types, red, blue, and yellow. And now here, you play through the first 4 areas of the game as Olimar, and things have been remixed, so that way things are in different areas, you use different Pikmin, there are different enemies, and things are placed around differently, and you basically get a little tight Pikmin experience, kind of similar to Pikmin 1. It's like how I like the core main Pikmin gameplay, and I don't love how you keep on getting pulled away from it in Pikmin 4 to do all these different things. Well, here you go. If you just want a few hours of dedicated core Pikmin gameplay, this is it. And they're actually not afraid to be slightly strict with this mode, because instead of 30 days to complete it, you only have 15 days, and the days are shorter than they normally are in the rest of the game. And it kind of came close. I beat this with like 6 days remaining, trying to be as efficient as I could. And, you know, I could see other players cutting a lot closer to the wire. So this is a really cool little side mode here. I really enjoyed it. It's not the best thing in the world because it ultimately kind of does just feel like playing through the first 4 areas again, but still, really cool, really fun inclusion. I don't even fucking know why they made this whole thing. Like, why? You didn't need this, but they put it in, and that's super cool. But anyway, when you beat the Olimar mode, you unlock an even cooler thing. You unlock the stories, 10 super-duper hard Dandori challenges. And once again, Dandori challenges, time to get those platinums. And these are what I'm fucking talking about, bro. Some of the later Dandori challenges toward the end of the main game do get pretty hard and took a lot of attempts, but they are nothing compared to these stories. These are ridiculously hard and require near-perfect strategy and execution in order to get the platinum. Some of these I found really hard just to beat in general before the time ran out. And this is where you get that really fast-paced, intense Pikmin gameplay that I'm looking for, where you're going here, and then you send Ochi over there, and then you have to send these guys over here to do this, and then use these Pikmin to break down that wall, and then you switch back to Ochi, and you have to fight this enemy, and then they have to start sending the things back, but you have to kill the enemies on the way, so that way they don't get attacked. And then, like, oh my god, these are so complex,
So challenging. I fucking love them. Getting platinum on all of these took so many attempts. I feel like these do absolutely everything you could possibly do with this game system. These flesh everything out as much as possible and pushes the gameplay to its absolute limit, and that is the thing I've always wanted out of Pikmin, and this mode gives you that, and it's fucking awesome. And with the way Pikmin 4 has all these different things, all these different modes of play, all these different ways that you can do things, it kind of feels like the ultimate Pikmin game for every type of Pikmin fan. If you really love the time management stuff, there is definitely stuff for you here. If you just enjoy Pikmin more casually as an adventure game, the main areas are there. If you really love the caves from Pikmin 2, they're back here as well. There's all this different stuff, and in many ways, it's better than it's ever been before. The only little niggle there is in the core main Pikmin gameplay, which is not as strong as I wish it was in the main areas, but everything else is so good that it definitely makes up for it, and makes for overall the strongest Pikmin game, in my opinion. Though I'm not sure if I would personally say it's my favorite Pikmin game because of how the core gameplay is so much weaker than Pikmin 3, because that's my favorite part of Pikmin, and Pikmin 3 is nothing but that gameplay, and it's really, really strong. So honestly, I'm very uncertain about which game I like more, Pikmin 3 or Pikmin 4. Both of these games are so awesome and offer so much, which I guess is the best problem to have. I don't know which is the best Pikmin game, the previous one or the newest one, because they're both just so goddamn good. I guess the only other minor criticism I would give to Pikmin 4 that I'm not particularly bothered by, but I could see some Pikmin fans not liking, is that this is probably the least replayable Pikmin of any of them because it's so fucking long. Because, you know, Pikmin 1 is like 3 hours, and so it really encourages those replays and trying to get more efficient and play better. But I fucking took so long to play through Pikmin 4, it took me like 42 days to beat the whole game, and I do not imagine I'm gonna be trying to do another run and try to get those days down anytime soon. Because it's just such a long playthrough, man. Are you fucking kidding me? But I really don't think that's much of a problem. It might not be as replayable, but the game is so much fun the entire time that I really don't care. A single playthrough of Pikmin 4 gives you more quality Pikmin gameplay than multiple playthroughs of other Pikmin games, so it's pretty hard to complain, in my opinion. And with that, I think I am finally done talking about Pikmin 4. I knew this video was gonna be so long because there is just so much in this game to talk about. It is so content-rich, so jam-packed, so well-made, so well put together, so polished, and so much fun. I'm not someone that's been waiting 10 years for this game, but I imagine that the longtime Pikmin fans are gonna be very, very satisfied with this game. It's awesome. In fact, it's so good that I don't even know where you go next. What could you possibly do in a Pikmin 5 that could top this? This feels like it's done absolutely everything that you could possibly do with the Pikmin formula. And in that sense, like I said at the beginning of the video, Pikmin 4 is such a modern Nintendo game, where they take a long-running series that they've had for a while and they bring it up to that next level where you're like, holy shit, I cannot believe how insanely good this game is. Where do we possibly go from here? And I really like how Nintendo is going through lots of their old IPs and bringing them up to that standard. Now please do F-Zero next, god damn it.